now I want to discuss something different, and namely smartphones. I want to know if you think banning smartphones in schools is a good or bad idea. 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring with your thoughts on this. So a London council is claiming to be the first to introduce a smartphone ban in both primary and secondary schools. Barnet Council has introduced the ban and also advised parents not to purchase phones for their children until they are at least 14, and are warning against letting kids create social media profiles also until their 16th birthday. Are you going to stop that? So the new rule will affect more than 60,000 pupils and has had a mixed response from parents. What do you make of this, Albie? Do you think it is a sensible move by Barnet Council?
Yeah, I think it's totally sensible. I think it should be rolled out across the country. I'm quite hardline on this. I actually think that smartphones should be banned for under 16s altogether. I don't think they should have access to social media accounts, for example. I think Ava and I were probably the first generation to go to school when we even had mobile phones, let alone smartphones.
Right, don't give that away.
And then a lot of people, sorry, Ava, we are
I think that might have been my
age
generation,
now.
actually, but OK, I'll let you take it.
But the point is, we all, three of us, survived school without having a smartphone. And now we're seeing kids in schools with smartphones with all of these behavioural problems, social anxiety, things like depression, unable to hold conversations properly, got very short attention spans. We're seeing all of these problems crop up in the past 10 years. And what's the big change in society for young people?
Hold on, is it the access to the internet or is it social media that you're worried about then?
It's
because
both.
When we're talking about depression and anxiety, I'm wondering whether that is the constantly being able to be contacted, or whether it is the going in and looking at other people's lives and how fabulous it is and how wonderful they're doing and comparing it to your own. I don't know which one you think is the worst.
I think it's both.
OK.
Because accessing the internet, when we used to sit at our desktop in the computer room with this massive box that used to whir and make a very loud sound, and you'd go on the computer for an hour, then your sister would, then your brother would, that's very different to being on your phone constantly, where you can access the internet all of the time, you're always contactable, and it just drives all of these problems in society and disruption in schools. School is for learning, not for social media.
Yeah, it's
ban the phones.
It's banned from school, not necessarily from children having smartphones.
OK, so I totally agree with your diagnosis of the problem, but the solution to me is not to ban them, but it's actually for schools to take a more active approach to helping children live alongside technology and social media. I'd rather teachers were able or allowed to be more interventionalist with phones. So the rule is, I would argue, you bring your phone into school, a teacher is allowed to look at what is on your phone. And I have this with family members who teach particularly, year 10, 11 and sixth form, and also my friends who teach that age group as well. The biggest problem that you have is a lot of bullying takes place on social media, and teachers are not allowed to access it. They're not allowed to actually, punish a child for what's gone on social media because it's happened out of school hours.
So we're talking about taking away a child's autonomy with their smartphone until they are maybe after school, post 18. OK, don't go anywhere because we're taking your calls on this right after the break. What do you make of banning smartphones in all schools? We're talking primary and secondary here. Is this a good idea, or actually do we need to introduce them and teach them how to use this technology properly? 0207 862 2222. OK, we can move on from that. I think we'll ponder how we feel about that after the show. Let's now get straight into calls on schools banning smartphones for all students under 16. Is that a good idea? 0207 862 2222. We'll go straight to the call. Stephanie from East Sussex. Ban them. Is that appropriate?
100%.
But what about
100%.
the need for children to communicate, get used to technology? Other councils are going to be having access to these schools and the kids are going to communicate with them and they're going to be a total blackout between 9 and 3 or 4?
Well, I'm only 44. I'm not that old, but we never had a mobile phone.
No.
I got my first one when I was 18. I had a phone card in order that I could call my parents in emergencies through a phone box.
Huh? But hold on, we don't want to, Stephanie, we don't want to go back to all the things we didn't have. There was a time we didn't have toilets indoors, but we're quite happy to all have them now. So sometimes as things evolve, we create things that are better. Maybe phones are a better way of communicating. Maybe they're safer for children to have.
Technology is definitely a part of our life now, and it has to be. That's never going to go away. But I don't think that children under 18 or under 16, if they need a phone, they could have an ordinary brick phone with a paper call for emergencies. But I think the mental health of this whole generation has been completely messed up. My youngest son is 14.
Is that to do with smartphones or social media?
Yes, I believe so. Both, I think. The internet in general, the access to everything all the time, I think it's messed up this generation completely. I have 4 children. My eldest is 26, my youngest is 14. They're all glued to devices all the time. And my 14-year-old recently had a discussion with me, and he's always glued to his phone or internet or something. Mm-hmm. And we had a discussion because he's learning psychology at school at the moment. That's one of the things he's studying. And he agreed to me. He said that the internet and the access to everything has actually messed up this generation completely.
Yeah, I think the awareness of it is definitely coming, but whether that will help the addiction part, I'm not so sure, Stephanie, but definitely there's a good awareness there with your son. And I wonder whether actually this ban would make it easier for parents like Stephanie, who doesn't really want her son to be glued to the phone, to say no. Stephanie, thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, that is the other big question, that at 18 you're just supposed to be able to use it well and not get addicted. Anne from West Yorkshire, what's your view on this ban?
I think people have been chained to their telephones, children and adults, and I think it's doing their mental health no good at all. And I think the tech companies are laughing all the way to the bank and making millions out of them, and they don't even realise it.
So, well, I don't think they don't realise it. I think they know exactly. In fact, I think social media companies purposely put things in place that make us come back and again and again and again to their apps and to their sites. So I think they're laughing to the bank fairly knowingly, Anne. But I appreciate your point. We have this technology now. It's not going anywhere. So what do we do to make it safer for us, Anne? Is it banning it for the under 18s? Is it targeting the social media companies and the smartphone companies to stop making their devices and apps so addictive? Do we need government to step in? What can we do?
All those things you've just mentioned.
So you would just do all three, so you would ban it for under 18s. What happens at 18 though, as Ava says, when all of a sudden that ban's lifted and you're expected to know exactly how to use this form of technology in a healthy way?
Well, I'm not saying particularly 18-year-olds. I'm saying maybe younger than that. Maybe they can have phones maybe at a younger age where they are able to be supervised with them and not just left on them all day to just mess about all day on their telephones. I do feel on the buses, when you're on the bus, if a baby cries, the mother sticks a phone in its hand. This is what it's come to, which is, I think, is dreadful.
I understand your concern there, Anne. Thank you very much for your call. But Anne makes a good point. Maybe it's not putting the pressure on the teachers. Maybe we put the pressure on social media companies and the people that make smartphones to stop making them so addictive.
Well, no, I mean, Anne's speaking my language, because I think that the government have been really cowardly, actually, in the way that they've approached tech companies. And I'd love to see them regulate those tech firms and have bans and controls. The algorithms are so powerful now. It knows like what razor you use, like what books you like, what you're going to have to eat next Tuesday. It knows if a child is using that social media site, and it could put blockers in.
Do we actually know yet whether it's listening to us? Because I am convinced that my phone is listening. If I mention a keyword, anything could be talking to a friend about something never spoken about before, all of a sudden I'm getting adverts for it left, right and centre.
Well, what's interesting is actually there's going to be a couple of tech companies, these social media companies, in front of Select Committee in Parliament next week. And I believe that is actually going to be one of the questions that the MPs will pose to them. So maybe we'll find out then.
Well, fingers crossed, because I'm convinced. But Albie, put more pressure on the companies. You would support that? Maybe more than a ban?
I think we can probably do two things at once.
Okay.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think tech companies certainly could be regulated, but not too much, because we don't want to stifle innovation. But equally, let's ban smartphones for young people.
I feel like you're all getting on board with Anne's idea. Thank you very much for your call, and thank you for all your calls. Ava and Albie, thank you for being such a brilliant panel today.